Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sabado nights. We haven't seen you in a while. Actually, last week we were not on, but tonight we're gonna have a great program for you. And just to review, no, we started with Marvin and talked about some tips on how to handle our finances and getting ready for crisis like this, for us to be prepared in the future, also to have some savings, investments, and all of that. And then right after that, we had a guest from the States, from Elevation Church. He used to be the um, campus pastor, not a campus pastor. He used to be the expansion pastor, and now he's a connect pastor. He's the one who's connecting people and building groups, smaller groups. Tama tama, because our season this time, globally, at least most of the nations, they're at home, and the only way people can meet is, of course, online. But that's why we started having this, because we wanted a way to reach out to you, also be able to answer some of your concerns outside of the church walls, ika nga. And so we started this. We have different people from different sectors. Maybe we'll have some from maybe education later on, maybe some the government area, but all of which have a heart for God. And how do you balance, if there's such a such a need to balance, church, ministry, work, family, all of these things. And so this evening we've got somebody wonderful, not outside of the church. He's actually one of our leaders, one of our board members in New Life the Fort, a good friend of ours, known him a long time. In fact, we were together in a production a long time ago, but now he is in the marketplace, grow as a leader, as a person, as a man of God, as a husband, and as a father as well. But as his gift continued to grow, it made a way for him to be in front of people that have influence. And so I read from the book of Proverbs first. No, Proverbs 18:16. I think this will be a good verse for people to also meditate upon. It says here, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men." Some translations would say, brings him in front of kings or dignitaries. So it might be you who's watching, who's listening. Right now, you're thinking about what God planned for you. But guess what? Just grow in your skill. Allow God to shape your character, and someday there will be an opportunity and a platform for you to speak to great people. You may not be the person who will have direct influence to the masses, but you may have an influence to the king, just like Daniel, that's like just like Joseph. And here tonight we have Carlo Mata. Okay, he is a director in the Philippine Operations of one of the largest and oldest global law firms based out of New York. And the reason why I wanted him in, because I believe he's one of the country's top leaders right now in his expertise, but also young. Parang ako, young, but he's I think older than me. No, that's not true. But without further ado, I'd like to bring in Carlo Mata. Come on, bro. There you
Thank
go.
you, Pastor Alvin. Thank you for that
Did I
introduction. Yeah,
do justice to the introduction?
you did, except on the age.
Siguro
Um,
I was talking about maturity.
Hindi rin eh.
Hindi rin. Okay.
Hindi
So
rin.
we'll move from that subject na lang. Okay, Carlo,
Okay.
in the church, of course, a lot of people would probably know you, but we recognize that this is, of course, the internet, and maybe there are some people who may not be familiar about your journey. So why don't you share with us a little bit of um, where you came from and how did you end up being the leader now of your firm here in the Philippines? Because I think it's an interesting story. It's an interesting journey. Go ahead.
Sure. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank you and Pastor Mitch for having me. It's an honor, and I'm excited. I believe I'm hopeful people will receive or learn something from the conversation, from the dialogue we will have tonight, including myself, including yourself. My journey, I'm 26 years old, and I'm just kidding. I I started work almost 2 months, less than 2 months after I graduated from college, from De La Salle University, where I took up business management. And my first job was in a building called the Enterprise Center, and I worked as a salesman. I worked as a an insurance salesperson, and I it was my first time ever to work. Obviously, nung time na yon, hindi pa uso ang online job hunting. Ang uso nun is you would print about 30 copies of your resume and then walk around Ayala, walk around Ortigas, all around the business district, and enter each of these offices and then just drop off your resume. And that's basically what I did. I saw the Enterprise building. I said, ang ganda ng building na to. I think I want to work here. I didn't even know what company I was applying for. I just dropped off my resume. Um, and then I got hired about less than a month later. And since then, my next role after that was working for my uncle and my dad in a startup company. It was also a marketing company of financial services. The difference this time was I had full operational, um, I guess, responsibility. And I would say this: I was very
Hmm.
young, I was very raw, I made a lot of mistakes. It was a learning experience. And less than 3 years into that startup, nalugi kami. We had to close down. And
Oh,
so that was the
wow.
time. Si Isa, my wife now, was graduated from college, and she was going around Ortigas applying for a job. And she just happened to have one copy of my resume with her. And we walked into, sinamahan ko siya, we walked into Discovery Suites in Ortigas. And she was applying for a job with a BPO company, with a call center. And she said, I have one copy of your resume. Do you want me to drop it off? I said, sure, why not? And then I didn't know how things worked back then. But on the same day, I was waiting for Isa to be interviewed. My name got called. I wasn't ready. I wasn't dressed for it. I was in jeans, a round neck shirt, sneakers. I had 3 interviews on that day. At the end of the day, I had a job offer, and I took it. That's how I ended up entering into the BPO industry. It wasn't really planned. I just seemed to like the way the office looked. It looked really hip. The vibe was really young. I remember walking into the sleeping quarters. There were white round leather beds, and then it looked like a scene from Austin Powers. Purple neon lights, parang see-through, parang semi-transparent curtains reflecting the neon lights. And I said, "Parang okay to ah. I'll give it a try." And I've been in the BPO industry since, and I just started to go from supervisor to manager to senior manager to director and now country head of the company where I'm at. But it's been a long process, and it's been a process of growth. And I believe I'm far from reaching my full potential because there's so much more to learn, and so many more things that I'm realizing I don't know. And so one of the reasons why I love this venue, Pastor Alvin, is one of the best ways to learn is to teach and to preach and to talk about it. Sorry, to talk about it, and it reinforces some of the things you already know. And sometimes you have your own aha moment from the very things you're saying.
That's wonderful. I'm sure there's more to the story than what you were, in a brief moment, no, biglaan yung tanong sa'yo. But you mentioned about uh, you went through some of your mistakes as you were, of course, going through your career. Do you mind sharing one of your mistakes, say years back? Now you look back, it was something that actually now helps you because you learned from that point. Can you share a little bit, maybe something that you can tell the people? Because I'm sure a lot of the people watching right now, or many of them, probably in the same scenario as you, or same setting as you, and they're in a moment where they made a mistake. What are they going to do? Probably their bosses are not happy with them at the moment, but how can they turn things around? Say, maybe you can share a tip or something, or based from your
Yeah.
experience.
One of the things that really stand out to me is, as I was growing up as a young leader, I was one of the most vocal and negative uh, supervisors and leaders around. And, you know, sometimes as young leaders, we have a lot of fire, right? We have a lot of
Mm,
passion.
mm,
And, we have all these bright ideas, and we like to, I like to criticize a lot of what my leaders were doing, what didn't
mm,
make sense to me. And I was very vocal and I spoke out a lot. And I remember 2004, I'm not going to name names, but my manager finally had enough. And in a team meeting, she just blurted out, she said, "Would you just shut up for once? Just shut up." Um, and and I did, but I realized one of the mistakes that young leaders make is we like pointing out problems and mistakes. And we like saying, ito kasi yung mali dyan eh. Ito yung kulang dyan. These are the things that they didn't think about. These are the things that they did not take into consideration. They should have done this and done that. But it doesn't take a
mm,
genius to point out problems. And I realized I wasn't really adding much value to the team or to the organization by simply
uh,
repeating or vocalizing what was already known by many. Um, and one of the things I had to learn from that process is that you have to take it one step further, because leaders
mm,
see problems, yes, but
yeah,
leaders
yeah.
don't stop there. Leaders have to go beyond seeing the problem and start
Mm,
contributing to the solution.
that's
And I
good.
had to learn that. And without learning that, there was no way for me to advance. I thought my criticism was adding value when in fact it was not. It was just tearing the team down.
Mm. You know, tama yung sinabi mo eh. You as even people at a young age, you'll recognize that there are problems all around, and I think we have, I guess it became more pronounced due to the internet, and people posting their feelings or whatever. People easily uh, uh, post their complaints and whatever. And
Yeah,
one other thing that you mentioned that's good is actually not just recognizing the problem, but how do you how do you bring it to a place where you find the solution? Kasi iba na yun eh.
yeah,
Anybody else
yeah,
can point out what's wrong, but how do you make
yeah.
it right?
Right.
That's the challenge for us as
Yeah,
leaders.
and
Eh,
I
go
think
ahead.
Pastor Alvin, I'll add to that lang. Sometimes you can add value by also pointing out some of the things that maybe leaders have blind spots on, right? I think at the end of it, it boils down to what is your motivation? What is your motive? What is your heart for speaking up?
Yeah.
And that will show it, that will come out. And if your heart is to destroy and to discredit,
Mm-hmm.
it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of the organization and the team that you are a part of.
Yeah.
And but if your heart is to strengthen the team and to bring light to a situation,
Yeah.
and and you learn, and eventually you learn how to properly frame it and deliver that message. Those are two totally different things, because even as leaders we need to hear what other people think that we probably don't know of. And
Yeah.
so the main difference there really is, what's the motive and what's the spirit behind your talk? Is it to destroy and discredit,
Yes. Yeah.
or is it to build up?
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people who think that they're leaders because they can already identify what's wrong. Parang meron silang sixth sense. I know what's wrong in this place. But and like you said, how you communicate what you observe is very important, because are you there to just complain and just gripe and just murmur and whatever, or are you there to actually add value, like you said, add value,
Mm,
change, shift, bring it to a place it may be uncomfortable. And so these are really good points. By the way, we're just starting, but we're already you know delving in some of the things that's really necessary as you grow. For those people who are watching, as you're growing as a leader, by the way, there's no point, at least for based on the people, I think Carlo will also agree, that regardless where you're at, how old you are, there's always room for you to learn and grow. There's never a point where
absolutely.
you go say, okay, I know everything, and I'm the best of the best, whatever. And we've
Absolutely.
seen people who've said, especially in sports, they say I'm the best of the best, but there's a point where you realize your record will be broken. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
if you have a question, for those of you who are watching, if you have a question, if you have something that you want to ask Carlo about, feel free to just type these things, and hopefully we see them, so that, because our conversation is it's already going on, but we will try to see what you have here and just connect with you. In fact, I want to shout out some of the people I see. Some of our friends here, actually, more of them, a lot of them are our friends. Well, Marvin is watching, by the way. How do you know Marvin? I
Ah.
see. I see both of you hanging out a lot and doing these mini videos. Can you share with us? Because he was our guest a few weeks ago.
Oh, Marvin kasi is a well-known public figure. Idol ko kasi siya. So sinusundan ko siya, sinusubaybayan ko siya. Uh, no, Marvin and I went to the same school, International Christian Academy. That's where I first met Marvin. But see, Marvin back then was this really, really, really quiet guy. Like he was so low profile. Um, he's totally opposite of what you see Marvin now. He has his reached 100,000 followers on YouTube. Congratulations, Marvin. But he's grown in his craft. So he's, by the way, Pastor, he's one of the people who, as leaders, you have to be surrounded by people who will sharpen you, right? So the Bible
So
says, as
good.
iron sharpens iron, so one
Yes.
man will sharpen the other. And Marvin has been instrumental in my life to just encouraging me to try different things, and the Lord has used him to give me certain platforms, and he's invited me into his very popular channel, and it's been
Yes.
an honor.
Wow. There you go. We also have Pastor Paul Gage, who's watching. You have, of course, you'd be familiar with this lady, Isa Gallardo Mata. Wow.
Oh yeah.
You're familiar with
uh,
her.
Best wife ever. Sorry, Marvin. Ninakaw ko na yung best wife ever mo.
Also, on a shout out, Tita Irene. Tita Irene is watching. I guess he wants to say if you're gonna say something nice to your mother-in-law.
Yeah. You know, I gotta tell you this. If they say happy wife, happy life,
Uh huh.
but I tell you, happy mother-in-law is as equally important as a happy wife. Trust me.
Amen to that.
Trust
Amen to
me.
that. So that'll be written as one of the new proverbs of New Life the Fort. There you go. So we've got some people from the church, of course, watching, and we want to encourage them to ask some questions. In fact, I want to ask you this question. Somebody sent this. As a young director or CEO, you obviously have people under you who are older and may have more experience than you. How do you deal with them if it comes to a point that they won't listen to you because you're young and they think they know better? Paano yun?
Um, so interestingly enough, this is not a hypothetical question to me. This is a
Real.
reality. This is very real to me. In fact, I talk about like climbing the ladder in the corporate world almost every single time in every organization I was in. Almost always, maybe 99% of the time, I was the youngest um, person in that position, and it's been tough. It was tough, especially growing up as a leader because I had so many blind spots. And what blind spots are, just so we're clear what we're talking about, blind spots are potential weaknesses that you have that can undermine your success. And so if you're a leader and you have a leadership blind spot, that blind spot is a weakness that will erode your credibility as a leader or undermine your capability to lead. And growing up, I had a lot of those blind spots. I would try to fake it till I make it. So I'd walk into a room, with so much insecurity, but pretending to be secure, right? Um, because I remember being hired as a manager, and there were two managers that were hired at the same time. There was me, I was 26 years old, very raw. And then the guy beside me, who was also hired together with me, was already 40 plus and extremely wise beyond his years. And so he and I were being compared. Um, and sometimes the best way to do it is, is you, as a leader, what people look for in you is authenticity. And people won't care so much or as much about what you know, as much as they know that you are real. In other words, they want you to be real and they don't want you to be pretending. And so, as a young leader, I think one of the things that you need to understand is you need to know your limitations. You need to know when to say you don't know something, and that you understand that you are only as strong as your team. And that just because you in an organizational chart are higher than someone does not by any means mean you are smarter or better than that person at all. It could be that the people that you lead are all smarter, wiser, and more skilled than you are. And as a leader, you need to understand that. And you cannot look at your position and say, well, because I'm the leader here and I'm the smartest in the room, you all have to follow me. That's the fastest way to lose credibility and have the people not follow. And so I think, the best way to do it is to really level with a person and deal with a person respectfully. I think at the end of the day, you can lead from a pulpit, you can lead from a platform or a stage talking to 1,000 people. But true leadership happens one to one when relationships are built. And when you have a person who's older than you and struggles with the credibility of your leadership, you need to be able to build relationship with that person and understand where is that person coming from. And maybe the person feels that way because the person is better than you. And so that is an opportunity for you to sit down and learn from this person, have an exchange of ideas, have an exchange of thoughts, and understand that your ideas and your thoughts, just because you're the person's superior, does not make you superior. It means nothing. It means nothing in the realm of leadership. And so respect, I think you have to respect the people regardless of age. And the key there is to not look at age. You have to look at people not for their age, not for their gender, not for their background, not for their education, what university they came from, nothing like that. You just respect them as people. At the end of the day, you will reap what you sow. And so as you continue to sow respect, eventually you will melt that ice and you will gain some respect back. Pastor, I can't hear you. Am I the only one?
Yeah, no.
Ayan.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned that as a leader, we need to recognize the personnel around us, whether it's somebody who's higher than you or lower or same horizontally speaking. Uh, what do you do if you're in a position to hire somebody? Would you hire a subordinate smarter than you, who's potentially a better leader than you, or would you feel insecure and try to stay, make sure that they're away from you or hired elsewhere? Is that a good move as a leader to hire somebody who's better than you?
Um, when I was I've had many conversations with many leaders, and we'd go through candidates that they're looking for,
Mm.
and oftentimes I'd say, what about this person? This person's clearly the strongest candidate among them. And because I have a very good relationship with my one downs, it's very transparent and very open. This person would say, can I be honest with you? The person makes me insecure,
Mm-hmm.
because the person is more accomplished than me,
Mm.
and the person is this and that. And so, I would have a dialogue, and we would have an exchange of ideas and wisdom. At the end of the day, though, I would respect my one down's opinion, because ultimately siya yung magmamanage nitong tao eh.
Yes.
Um, and so I've had more than one situation where my manager under me would choose someone inferior, and it's almost always, more often than not, it doesn't turn out too well. It
Mm.
turns out to be a headache, because
Mm.
you're constantly trying to pull the person up, and
Yeah.
you're trying to push the person up. Now, if the person has a lot of potential and is very teachable, malleable, and it's just a matter of you taking that and developing it, that's a totally different situation. But if, as much as you can, try to get the person who, number one, is most fit for the job,
Yeah.
and number two, not necessarily the strongest candidate, but the one that is most needed by the team. And what I mean by that is, if you had five Kobe Bryants in a team who all needed to score and make the last shot,
Mm.
it probably wouldn't look too pretty. So when you put together a team, understand, take assessment of your team's strengths and your team's weaknesses in choosing that next candidate, because you can, that's the next filter. Maybe it's not about who's the strongest. Maybe it's about, what does the team need the most to grow.
Yes. Okay. Um, the importance of having role players,
Yes.
I think that's if you're creating a team, is it possible to have a team of all superstars? Because that alludes to your Kobe Bryant analogy, diba? Will it work if a team is just full of superstars? Because you have to add. I've never really worked in a corporate setting. It's always per project, or of course in a theater setting and all of that. So it's very different. But I'm trying to imagine the culture as well in the corporate world for some people, maybe not you, for people who are maybe at this point a subordinate, but eyeing their boss's job, and they're just looking for an opportunity. So you have that angle now. You know what? I'm just looking for my, waiting for my opportunity. But one day I'll take your job, whatever it is. So you have all these things going on. Um, how do you navigate that? Like, I'll give a more pointed question. Have you ever been in a situation where and people around you know, and your bosses know that you are actually better than your immediate boss, and he knows or she knows that you're better, and giving you a hard time because of it? How did you actually deal with that situation? Have you ever been in a situation like that?
One of the things that being around church has taught me is to honor your leaders.
Mhm.
And that's something that got ingrained in me, that I took even in the corporate world. And one of the things that I've always taken to heart as one as my it was almost never written, but I felt it was my job description.
Mm-hmm.
Was one of my main job descriptions was always to make my boss look good.
Mm.
And regardless of what my boss's weakness was, I felt wherever my boss was weak at was my opportunity to support.
Wow.
And one of the things that I can't say obviously I'm imperfect. I'm sure I've slipped up, but I've always tried to make my boss look good.
Wow. Great
I
point.
felt it was my job to make my boss look good because ultimately it's your boss that will position you anyways. Some people say, yeah, but what if your boss is this and that? You know, I think you reap what you sow, right? And so
Wow.
I've not been in situations where my bosses have tried to take me down. I've been in situations where my bosses have always advocated for me. And in fact, the time I first got promoted to director, that was a Monday, and Friday before that, I had a major um, argument with my female boss, and it was a raising of voices. But she and I had a good relationship. She knew I was never hitting below the belt. It was an argument on
Mm.
ideas.
Yeah.
And little did I know, after that argument, the country manager pulled her and said, "Who do you think is ready?" And she said, "I think Carlos ready. He
Wow.
can stand. He can." And so the country manager called me into his room, and I thought on that day I was going to be reprimanded. And he said, "I had asked this person, your boss, who is ready to be the peer, a co-director." And this person said, "You." And
Wow.
whether it the truth is this, I don't think I was the most qualified. I thought there were one or two more qualified individuals. To this day, if you ask me, I think that person, those two people, I continue to honor.
Mm.
They were my seniors in that organization. But I think so long as never undermine authority above you,
Mm.
it will not end well. It does not end well. I think you continue to honor. The Bible says all authority has been established by God, right? So
Wow.
whoever is above you, when you see a weakness, you can either criticize that weakness or you can work behind the scenes so that no one sees the weakness. So that as a team
Wow.
together, you make your boss look really good. Ultimately, you will be in a position where a position opens up and your boss will speak highly of you, similar to what Pharaoh did for Joseph.
Yeah. That's a really good point because one of the cultures that we are trying to build as well in New Life, as a church, is really the culture of honor. But one would say honor, okay, have a mindset of honoring, but one sees it as sip sip, diba? Just earning brownie points. So for you, or how do you advise people now, there's a thin line between being sip sip just to the cheerleader for your boss and exactly what you're saying, adding value and being a support where there's weakness. You try to support, not to cover up, but to just be a stronger unit. How do you uh, handle these things?
So first of all, if you find yourself in a position, if you're listening to this and you find yourself in a position where you've already undermined your boss,
Mm.
look, I'll say this: there's grace available for you, right? And um, I'll say one the the biggest regrets I've had in the even in leadership in the corporate world were not tactical or strategic mistakes. They had nothing to do with skills
Mm.
or your critical thinking. The biggest regrets I've had and I've had to learn from and I've had scars from are mistakes of character, are flaws of character. And to this day, I would say this: what I say today, for example, don't undermine your boss. you know you would find yourself sometimes, because you're imperfect, you would find yourself undermining someone, and you catch yourself, right?
Mm.
Um, I think so long as you can always go back and apologize, you can repent. But the thing about it is when you make those mistakes, it does it does somehow damage, right? I mean, there is grace, but there are
Yes.
consequences as well, right? And for me, I've had to live with the consequences of having to make up for my slip ups. But ano nga pastor ulit yung tanong?
No, the question is, because these are really, really good
Sip
points.
and
Honoring.
okay.
Yeah. What about those people who kind of don't know, they cross the line and it comes off parang they're just there for brownie points and just being a cheerleader and not really adding, but they
Yeah,
think that they're honoring, but it's really not. And also, there will be people that will misinterpret what you're trying to do, and they just
of
say, "Hey,
course.
sip sip naman yan eh," or he's just there to you know get brownie points or whatever it is.
Um, First of all, you cannot make everyone happy.
Mm.
And one of the things that you need to understand is this: if you hate criticism and you hate being judged, you would not like being a leader. Um, because as a leader, there was this saying that if you find yourself with a lot of knives on your back, chances are you are up in front and people are behind. So as a
Mm.
leader, oftentimes your position puts you in a place where people will speak about you.
Mhm.
So first of all, you've got to understand, no matter what you do, you will have people who will have negative things to say about you, who will be critical
Yes.
about what you say or do. And you are not called to lead everyone. Okay, you are called to lead some and not everyone.
Mhm. Good point.
Um, and you've got to be secure in that. But I think what's important is you always have to also understand and evaluate your relationship with your leader, with your boss.
Mhm.
uh, the higher up you go as a leader, it's harder to get honest feedback because typically people are afraid of what you're capable of doing because you're a boss, you're a leader, and
Uh,
so
uh,
they're
uh,
not
uh,
going to
let,
tell you.
let me interject. Is that an Asian thing, or is that also because you've dealt with international people? Is that also common in the Western side of the globe?
I think it's human nature, but more so in Asia. I find the Western culture definitely more direct, less hierarchical. Um, but for us Asians, we find order growing up, diba? Kuya, ate, kahit
Yes.
na 1 year older lang, kuya or ate or but so when you honor someone and you build a good relationship, you would know that you're honoring the person also because when you have an honest relationship, you can tell them what you think
Yeah.
because they know your heart. They know your heart. They know that their best interest is in your heart, and that when you tell them, for example, hey, I thought I thought how you handled yourself in the meeting in that boardroom wasn't your best version of yourself. I
Mm.
thought I thought you were too harsh. I thought you were too aggressive and you were very impatient. And people don't see that because it's behind closed doors. They
Yeah.
don't know that you are a public cheerleader, but in private you have a relationship that is able
That's so
to
true.
speak correction, and that's not disrespect. And again, it's not about, yeah, but I'm your boss. It does not matter, you're the boss. You have something to learn from everyone in your organization, and if you continue to think that way, soon enough you won't be leading anyone but yourself.
Wow.
So I think don't be afraid of what people will say when they see you in public. They can never judge what's in private. At the end of the day, you are responsible for the authenticity of your relationships. And so long as you know your heart is not to get brownie points that you can convert later on to favor, but that it is really a heart of honor, I think you're in a good position. You're in a good spot.
That's good. That's a quotable quote. You are responsible for the authenticity of your relationship. And, not all relationships are created equal, of course. There are some degrees of intimacy with people that are closer to you. And so, all these things, learning, this is not just in church. This is not just in the corporate setting. This is real life, diba? And those are
Mm,
so good points. You mentioned something earlier, that you were promoted, right? You were promoted, but the day before or a few days before, you had an argument with your immediate boss. Okay, because a lot of people, as Asians, we tend to be agreeable, maybe passive aggressive, or
yeah,
we don't say it direct. We tell our friends, we tell someone, and then aabot na lang dun sa. But
yeah.
is it okay, you know, to not always be agreeable? How do you time that? Are there times that it's okay for you to say what you think, or depende rin sa leader if they give you that platform? Kasi, uh, a lot of people. In fact, I was listening to this. I was listening to this uh, podcast, and it was a conversation between uh, an owner, a Western guy, who loves to hire Filipinos. And of course, because he loves the way that we're hospitable and all of that. But one thing very interesting that he said, well, two things. He said, uh, you're sure that they will not end up competing with you because we're not entrepreneurial. It's very interesting. And another thing is that they tend to be more agreeable.
Mm.
So is that a good thing for us, or is there something that we need to learn or whatever? Because you stood up for yourself, you spoke your mind, and then that something happened to your boss. Say, you know what, this guy's ready. Is that always a good tactic to have in the office?
I think you need to evaluate the situation. Um, if you work for someone who is definitely not open to hearing your ideas, to your feedback, understand that you're sticking your neck out, and
Mm,
you've got to be very tactful in the manner in which you say it. And I'd say this: the context and the environment and the energy all make a difference, right? They all make a difference. If it's just the two of you, then there are things that you can say, depending on the tone will depend on your relationship, but it will totally be different if you're saying it in front of your entire leadership team. And so sometimes you've got to weigh it and feel it and see if maybe the best way is to say something like, I think that's a great idea. um, Maybe on top of that, we consider doing this. So you're not saying the person's wrong, but you're giving additional thoughts that can be considered. So also the way in which, I guess, feedback is given makes the tone makes a very big difference, right? Whether you're talking to a boss or talking to your wife or husband or talking to your parents, or friend, uh, more than the content, it's also the manner in which you say it, and the timing also matters. If I know someone who, this person would love to share his ideas with me, believe it or not, when I'm in the urinal in the office, I'm just there, he follows. Boss, I have this great idea. I was wondering if you'd consider, and I'd say this, like, that's the wrong place to pitch, the wrong place and time to pitch an idea. So you sort of have to understand the rhythms also of your boss. When are they most busy in a day? Uh, um, is it better to talk to them before a meeting, or is their mind laser focused on a meeting that everything you say will just bounce off and not be absorbed? Is it better to talk to them at the start of the week or at the end of the week? Is it better to talk to them after work or during meetings or during one-on-ones, and each one is uniquely different, and so you cannot have a cookie cutter approach to dealing with everyone, including your bosses, and if you're a boss, the people who work under you. Master Alvin, you're on mute.
Um, Somebody said here, I think it was Paulo who said, 44 minutes nakalipas, ang bilis. So meaty. And really, this is not, what Carlos is talking about is not just for people who already are in a position of leadership. Because I think regardless where you are in the organization, there it's a mindset, as a leader, not trying to be bossy. In fact, that's one of the questions. How do you become a leader without being bossy? That's one of the things that maybe I'll throw at you. But if you're enjoying the conversation, it will remain in Facebook and I think YouTube, so you can tell other people if you have somebody in mind. Hey, why don't you listen to this conversation? When they were having a conversation, I thought of you. Maybe you can pick up some tips. And so thank you for joining us. If you still have questions, so go ahead. And if you want to quote Carlo, please quote him properly. Okay, don't misinterpret some of the things that he was saying. Um, you're talking about rhythm, no? In other words, you're saying that there is no like formula in how to deal with your boss, how to deal with your subordinate. There's no formula because it's highly personalized. But that's a really really good point, and that's not something that you just take to go to work, but that's something for life. There's a question here. What's this question? When will be the good time to deal with negotiations, from like how they say big boys do, to being empathetic or being considerate to where that partner is coming from? You see that? That's a question from James Duque. It's right there.
When will when will be the good time to deal with negotiations, from like how they say big boys do to being empathetic or being considerate to where the partner is coming from? I'm not so sure I fully understand the question. Um, maybe you're also trying not to reveal too much with the question. That's why you're sort of keeping it a tad bit vague, and I'd respect that. I'd say this though, as a leader, you always have to be empathetic.
Mm.
Um, Empathy is one of the requirements of effective leadership, and you know you always, especially in times of crisis, we are in a crisis now. The whole
Mm.
world is living through a crisis, and in times of crisis, um, being empathetic is one of the most important things, because even no matter how fully bought in to your mission or your leadership mission or to your
Mm.
organization's mission is, at a time of crisis or at a time of potential danger. Okay, danger. It could be danger of losing a job, danger of getting the short end of a stick, or anything that gives a person a sense of things are in danger.
Mhm.
People will not listen to you about your mission and your organization's vision until they understand that they are safe,
Okay.
and that you understand where they are coming from, and that you understand that you have their best interest in mind. I think in negotiations, the best negotiations are where not one wins and the other loses. But the best negotiations are the ones that you're able to have a great dialogue and come out of it both finding a solution where both win. Um, because ultimately, if you're going to partner with someone, if you take advantage short term of the situation now, nalamangan mo siya, eventually that partnership won't last. You
Mm.
have to have a partnership where you are both caring for each other's well-being, each other's welfare. Where if Pastor Alvin and I are in partnership, If Pastor Alvin is not present in the country, he knows I will take care of his family for him while I'm here. Or if I'm out of the country and my family has an emergency, I know Pastor Alvin will come running to protect my family and their
Mm-hmm.
safety.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of partnership that will last. And
Wow.
so empathy is always a requirement in negotiations. In fact, you cannot properly negotiate if you don't have the ability to empathize with the person you're negotiating with, because you don't understand what triggers this person or what this person responds to. So empathy, if you want to be effective even in negotiations, you have to be empathetic with the people you are dealing with.
Okay, I think timing din yun, 'di ba? It's a question of timing. When do you negotiate? Especially, syempre iba yung context of negotiation within the within the office. It's different when you're negotiating when you're talking about sales, clients, and all of that. Those are kind of different platforms. But I think it will boil down to timing and uh, the level of relationship you have with a person. But empathy
Yeah.
is a big
Pastor,
thing these days. Yeah.
can I just add this? This might help to James who asked this, right? Um, if the context, if you're asking on behalf of people who are, say, negotiating with their bosses or these people, I'd say this: ultimately, you want to be able to work in an organization where you are celebrated, right? Where your skill
Mm-hmm.
set and your values are celebrated and not tolerated. In other words, they like to honor you as well. And I think honor is a big thing because it takes a culture of honor in an organization where you're where you're endeavoring to honor one another. And when that is present in the environment and the culture of an organization, where you honor your boss honors you, and cross back and forth, and there's honor. And that doesn't mean you're always in agreement and you never argue, but
Mm-hmm.
that even in argument you respect the person's thoughts, you respect the person's value and what they bring to the table, even if you don't meet eye to eye. So ultimately, you have to, if you're talking to the big boys, make sure the big boys understand your value. Also understand maybe you have a different timeline and criteria. If you're old school, maybe old school people like to see you prove your worth through time.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
younger people, I remember having a one-on-one with someone who was 6 months in the organization, and he said, "I'm 6 months now. When's my promotion?" And kaka-regular niya lang, And I said, "Wow, I think we need to recalibrate some of our expectations." So expectations, Ren, are something that you need to work on.
Wonderful, wonderful points. Okay, for just a short break, I have some rapid fire questions to you, Carlo, and
Or
answer as quickly as possible. Favorite color?
blue.
There you
I
go.
should say green. Blue.
There you go. Favorite food?
Ah, junk food. Cheetos.
Good answer. Uh, Favorite place for vacation?
Beach.
Okay. Most romantic place where you went with your wife, Isa? Ayan na. Subjective naman to sa'yo to eh.
Europe.
Okay. Um, if you could be in anyone's shoes for a day, who would it be and why?
Oh,
Past or
so
present figure,
um,
except Jesus, of course.
siguro, except my gosh, ang hirap naman itong tanong. I'll choose someone. Michael Jordan.
Oh, okay. Wow. Siguro, did you just watch
I
the
did. I
Netflix?
did.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet. Who among your kids is most like you?
Interesting. All three of them have an element that is so like me, but they are all. None of them are 100% me.
Hopefully not facial hair, no? Because
No,
they're all girls.
hopefully not.
There you go. Um, so let's go to some of the questions. By the way, thank you guys for posting all these reactions and all these questions. I'm certainly enjoying the conversation, and I guess you guys also are enjoying it, learning a lot of things. There's a question here. It says, if there are three best things that a leader can impart to his team, what are the three things you can impart, and why? Wow.
Wow. I don't know if I can get to three, but I'll think of, I'll say what comes to my mind the most. Self-belief. I think one of the best things a leader can impart to the people he leads is their belief in themselves that they can do it, and that anything that they set their minds to, if they are willing to work for it, to roll up their sleeves and put in the work, that they are able to achieve. That nothing is beyond them, regardless of their social class or their educational background.
Hmm.
So self belief is one. Number two, I think it's empathy. Um, as a leader, you want your people to who are also, you develop them to be leaders, and you want leaders who are not all about themselves, who are about the people. In fact, um, I'll go to the third. The last thing that you'd like to impart to the people you lead is that time when you're able to already step away from the limelight, and people don't see you anymore as the leader, but they see
Hmm.
the people that you've developed as leaders. I think that is I'd probably say personally for me, that is the greatest reward of leadership,
Wow.
is to be able to step back from the limelight and just watch the people you've worked with and you've developed, and have also developed you, just bask in that limelight, and people see them for who they
Yeah.
are, the value that they bring. I think that is one of the best things you can impart to them, is a platform to shine.
Wow. Three things that you can teach your team, the people that you're raising. Wonderful things. Wonderful things. You mentioned about and you went on for a bit about that because it was a part of the question about empathy. Um, can you tell me the distinction between empathy and competency, and which one solves the problem? Because there's
Empathy
a
and competency.
yeah, because there's a I guess in the more the political sphere now na parang uh, because there's a push towards a certain direction, you're not compassionate, you're not empathetic because you lean towards a certain way, and suddenly, and it's being brought to every sphere, every area now, di ba? Sa education, sa sports, whatever it is, being empathetic. When is it that you can say there's too much of it, or it's leaning towards the wrong way? How do you balance both? Because at the end of the day, corporations uh, rely upon the competency of their hired people, right? It's not just all about empathy. Empathy builds the
Absolutely.
relationship, and so
Yeah.
so can you comment on that?
I would say this. If you needed a life saving surgery or medical procedure to be done, and it was an open heart surgery, and the hospital made you choose, do you want this doctor who cares for people a lot, or do you want this doctor who is skilled but has no empathy whatsoever? Who would you choose? And as someone who's about to go under the knife, you hate to have to choose one or the other. And at the end of the day, organizations will pay for results. And there are two things that bring about results. You mentioned competency, and I'd call that as technical competency. Your knowledge of the job, your ability to have critical thinking, to make decisions, to be strategic. But then your technical competency won't get you very far as a leader if you also don't have people competency. People competency is about your ability to be relatable to people, to bring people along the journey, to paint a vision and get people to buy into the vision and understand it. And those two things are intertwined, and it's very hard to separate. Because if you want to be able to drive results, if you are all about hard competency skills, then you crack the whip a lot as a leader, and you are a slave driver, and it's like, this is how it's done, this is how it's soon you won't have the people to follow you that will give lift to your aircraft that is needed. At the same time, if all you have is you know basta kami friends kami lagi, never nga kami nag-aaway,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
but you're always over budget, you're always behind schedule, your product is inferior, and you are at the end of at the bottom of the market, you also won't survive. So at the end of the day, you have to marry your technical competency with your people competency, and
Mm-hmm.
bring that together to bring results and add value to the people you lead and the
Yes.
organization that you serve.
Wow, wonderful. Good points. Good points. So, listen well, people that are listening, rising leaders or future leaders or present leaders. These are the things that we should be thinking about, praying about, learning about. Improving in skills. You mentioned a while ago. I keep going back to the things that you said. Very good point about belief in yourself. Okay, for those of you who are ultra spiritual, that will say, "Oh, it's not me," and I'm sure you have dealt with people who in the corporate world who might be yung bent nila is more spiritual in a weird way.
Yeah.
Um, so, how have you dealt with people? How maybe first part of the question is going back. Um, when you say self belief, how do you put that in a context of those people who speak Christianese?
Um, Interesting. Isa and I were talking about this over lunch, and one of the jobs of a leader is to be relatable to the people you
Mhm.
lead and the people you interact with. And sometimes as Christians, we preach to the choir,
Mhm.
and everything we say benefits no one but the choir and everyone
Mhm.
on stage, and the audience cannot relate to what we say.
Yeah.
Very recently, I had to do a very, very big presentation to the global heads of the organization I work for. And it was I was allotted 90 minutes to present, which is the most time my boss has allotted for anyone.
Wow.
And the truth is, I think the presentation was only for 45 minutes. The rest was discussion.
Hmm.
45 minutes of presentation took me about 15 to 20 versions of my PowerPoint draft, and maybe 35 hours of preparation,
Wow.
stressful preparation. And the preparation behind that was not preparation for me to know what I was going to say. It was not that, because I was presenting plans that I knew in my heart. I
Yeah.
can dream, and I know my plans, the plans for the organization. The preparation I was really getting into was, how do I deliver this message
Yes.
so that it is relatable to my audience, so that it is something that not I'm not going to be delivering a monologue that no, and I'll be hearing crickets because no one understands.
Yeah.
But it's the care, the time and the care you take to have the humility to look at what your audience has to say, or what they're thinking, where they're going to be coming from, and how they will be receiving the message. And so for 35, 40 hours, I prepared
Wow.
for a 45-minute presentation,
Mhm.
because I respected my audience enough to know that I needed to speak their language.
Mm.
And sometimes we say, for example, we use terms that are so very church like,
Mm.
which is fine within the context of church. But we need to understand that if we are going to speak to someone else, instead of saying, for example, if I'm speaking to the world, I'm not talking to church, okay? If I say faith is the currency of heaven, if you talk to my friends who are, say, non-Christians, who I have
Yeah.
Muslim friends, I have Buddhist friends, I have all kinds of friends,
Yeah.
their understanding of faith is religion.
Yes.
Religion. So faith equals religion, or religion is the currency of heaven. But I can simplify that and I can say trust is the currency of heaven. Trust in what the word says. Trust in who Jesus is. Trust in. So I can, with little tweaks, you're not changing the message,
Yeah.
but you are, yeah, and that's the challenge, Pastor Alvin, in for anyone, actually, not just leadership, is how do you continue to make your message relatable without watering down the message, without
Wow.
losing the essence of that message? But it
Right.
takes a lot of humility as well to be able to look at your audience with eyes of compassion and say, they are unchurched. They don't understand. And so I have to speak a language that they will relate to, that they will
Yes.
understand, because otherwise all I'm preaching to is the choir.
Yep.
And that's within the context of church. Now within leadership, it's the same thing. In corporate leadership, if all you're saying is technical jargon that none of your people can relate to and
True.
follow, you may come across as very impressive, and everyone was impressed by how smart you sounded. But if no one could relate to it, and no one can understand it in a way that they can execute and act on it, then you failed as a
Right.
leader.
Well, I remember uh, one time. No, we did it several times with me and Pastor Mitch when we were still doing some uh, events. And one of the events that we went to, it's not actually an event. It's actually like it was for a bank and their junior executives, and we were role playing. It was a workshop in a sense on how to do interviews. So we come in, we had a particular role to play with we come in with our resume, and
Mhm.
our part is to be believable. But also what they don't know is that we're also in a sense we will be giving comments about how they interviewed us, because they were supposed to bring out some of the our character flaws, or some of the things, issues in our lives, because the tendency is always going to the default, which is talking about technical stuff. we
Yeah.
were act- we didn't know any technical stuff about banking and finance and all of that, but what they were supposed to do is ask questions that will bring about certain issues. If we have problem with alcohol or whatever, they were supposed to detect that. And exactly what you were saying, a lot of them, they lean towards the language that they know, which is the technical stuff and the skill and all of that. But we have to be gifted enough, I guess, and grow in that sense where we can bring out some of the things that's really the issue. And I'm sure you've seen these things at in your workplace. In fact, can you give me an example where somebody in your office was operating, um, how do I say this, they're bringing in the language, or they're um, being too spiritual but not connecting? Because I don't mind being spiritual, but bringing it to a place where it's not appropriate in your workplace. I mean, how did you deal with that when you when that situation presented itself?
So first of all, that's never ever ever an easy situation to deal with,
Mhm. As a Christian, also, diba? I mean, you deal and
especially
you
as a
understand.
Christian.
Yes, yes.
Especially as a Christian. But one of the things that we need to understand is that, in the world, they don't see with spiritual eyes. The world
Mhm.
sees with natural eyes. That's why nga signs and wonders follow, diba? The signs and wonders are for the world to see.
Mhm.
And that said, the fruit in the natural world, in the corporate world, is what gives you a platform. It's what gives you credibility.
Mhm.
So when you are paid, doesn't matter if you're a country head or a CEO or a manager or supervisor, you are a steward. You are an entrusted steward of the vision that is handed down to you to carry out, to grow, to
True.
execute. And you need to understand the context of what you are caring for. And you need to be able to play by the rules of the organization that
Yeah.
has entrusted you enough to give you a position of leadership and influence, and not to abuse it to for self gain purposes. And so, as a leader in my organization, we have people from all walks of faith.
Yeah.
In fact, we have people who don't believe in any form of religion or faith. And so I got to say this: born again Christians are not the only people who are good on earth.
Wow.
And
Come on.
you know, there people the Lord loves everyone. And if you put people in a marginalized situation and you isolate them, and they feel like that they are second rate or second class members of the organization simply because they don't carry the same belief that you have, then you
Mhm.
are not being a good leader, because you need to protect everyone's rights. And so in it's tougher when you're a leader. Honestly, it's tougher when
Wow.
you're a leader because you carry a certain level of influence. If you say something, it can be construed as that is the official position of the entire organization.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful that if you are going to allow the expression of religious belief in one area, so long as it's not, it doesn't cross the line where it's already attacking or pushing people, that you
Mhm.
need to be able to protect everyone under your care, because you are not just a leader of the people who believe what you believe. You are a leader of everyone in your organization, and you must care for everyone's well-being. And that is the fruit that they will see, that they will respect, that they will understand your heart. And honestly, this has opened up doors for me to have one-on-one conversations that I
Wow.
cannot do in a platform on stage. But it's to understand that context. And if you are not allowed, for example, um, to have, say, praise and worship nights in the office using office electricity, office facilities, office, don't do it. You don't own the company. If you want, buy the company, hire everyone, buy all the facilities, the building, the equipment, then you can do what you want to
Yes.
do.
Yeah.
But until then, you have to play by the rules. And if the organization is also one that aligns with your beliefs and wants to allows you the freedom to express that along the same lines, well and good. But understand this: in this day and age, the Lord will put us everywhere, in every field, in medicine, in science, in companies,
Wow.
even in the darkest, deepest, blackest, most evil places that exist today. And we have to have the wisdom to know, be led by the Holy Spirit on how to carry an authentic life, as best as we can, um, so that you're not having to just speak it, but the fruits show.
That's great. Great point. Still on the point where, is there, like, maybe some people know that you're a Christian, and then somebody else in the company is a Christian. Is there like an expectation where the boss is Christian and the subordinate is Christian, that there's a special favor on that person because you have a understanding? And what about those people who are vocal about their belief, but they're really underperforming? How do you deal with that? And there's just so that you can answer in one whole thing. Um, uh, there's a question here. there is this impression if you are a born again Christian, hindi dapat magalit, even if the output was not met best based on what has been agreed on. How do you manage that? So I think that's you can clump that together. How do you comment on that?
Man, I'd say this. I'd say again, as a leader, I just happen to be in a higher position on a paper, on an
Mhm.
org chart. And honestly, when it comes to these things, authenticity and all that, my goodness, I can learn from so many people in the organization. That's why we all need one another, right? So if there's one thing, as I mentioned earlier, that I struggle with growing up as a leader, Pastor, it's not so much my technical skills. I love the lesson of Pastor Paul Chase on roots of character,
Mhm.
because that is if there's one thing that that has sort of been the area that I have had regret in, it's uh, in areas where what I say and what I believe in aren't always in full sync with what I am doing.
Mhm.
And understand, the truth is this: as a Christian, there is an expectation. You will be judged for that. Um, and sometimes there's an expectation of being perfect. For those who don't know, my I grew up as a pastor's kid, and honestly, the expectation ever since I was young was, oh, anak ka ng pastor, you have to be this. And I never liked it. Honestly, in fact I tried to move off as far away from that as possible, because I just wanted that weight of expectation has always been there.
Mhm.
But let's say this: make sure that pag nagalit ka, there's a way kasi na pag nagalit ka, uh, you create a lot of collateral damage and you destroy people's spirits. That's not the right way to get angry.
Mhm.
Um, if you do decide to address a situation, make sure you're addressing the situation. Make sure you're addressing and you're not hitting below the belt, right?
Mhm.
Um, you asked the question, Pastor, paano if Christian yung tao, we're both Christian, but the person's
Mhm.
underperforming? I had that situation.
Mhm.
And the truth is, when I have a conversation with that person, it's funny, he approached me and he said, boss, I have the new book of Pastor Joseph Prince. Ito pala siya, ganito. I'll share it with you. He shared it to me. And he said, boss, what was it you wanted to talk about? After I thanked him and I hugged him for the book, I told him, I said, it's been too long that you've been underperforming, and it's not a very good witness. So I used the
Mhm.
language that he would relate to. I said it's not
Mhm.
a very good witness to the people around you, and ultimately you have to deal with it. uh, I've had to move people out of the organization that that person and I both shared the same faith, but
Mhm.
just it just wasn't the right fit anymore for the
Mhm.
organization. Either they weren't delivering or it was just too controversial, or but outside those doors, outside that context, there's respect as brother and sister.
Yes.
And I think pastor maturity really comes into play
Yeah.
in situations like that.
I guess at the end of the day, you're not responsible on how you cannot control how they will respond and how they react to you, as long as at the end of you yourself, you were integrous, you were respectful, you were honoring, and there is a way to be able to part ways without cutting the friendship off or something like that. I think it's never an easy situation, di ba? Kasi
Yeah.
there may be some false expectation, maybe not on you but on the other person. They say, hey, maybe they will give me a special favor because we're here. Do you come into, let's say, for those who um, maybe a bad term to use would be super Christians and who see their place as a mission field, right? And there's nothing wrong
Yes.
with that, but their approach is, I'm going to turn this company into a Christian. Every person here will be evangelized, every cubicle, whatever, every opportunity I get, since now I'm the boss, you know let's do this. Is that a good you know do you take that platform and say, sige, mag-service tayo pagka every, I think you mentioned that a while ago, but can you just expand on that?
I've had a situation like that. I'm not gonna say in which organization I was in. And I love this person as a brother, you know, in the faith. But this person was in a very influential position in the organization,
Mhm.
um, a very sensitive and influential, powerful position in the organization. And this person saw the office not almost secondary na yung work.
Mm.
Uh, Parang nandun siya every day to witness. And siguro okay lang siguro yun if hindi napabaya yung trabaho, if the
Mhm.
work was still being delivered. Um, but even if the work was being delivered, that is very controversial na, di ba? Pero parang ginawa niyang open mission field
Mhm.
yung office. And there was also a battle within me because nakita ko yung anointing na sa kanya to evangelize eh.
Uh-huh.
Very clear. Very clear this person had the anointing to evangelize. Um, but the role that this person was in was conflict to what this person was trying to do.
Mm.
Um, and so I had a very long conversation with this person until about 5 in the morning in the office. Lumalabas na yung araw, nag-uusap pa kami. And it was a conversation wrapped in God's love, but it was very direct, very respectful, but pulling no punches.
Yeah.
And saying, as your boss, this can no longer continue.
Wow.
As your brother, as your brother, there's a greater call in your life outside this company. This company is not where you will find your identity in. There is a higher call. I saw it. There is a higher call in your life. And I can already see it. It's already time. The time is right. It's the season for you to move now. And we hugged, and this person now is, wow, making an impact in the mission field. And sometimes as leaders, it's up to us to release people to their seasons, to their
So
right
good.
places, and not to hold them back. Even if the fear is, yeah, but what will they think of you? You lost this person under your team. But that's not the point. If you care for this person and you care for the higher purpose, you're going to let the person go because this is where the person will shine, even if it means it's no longer under you.
I remember. I remember. Well, the other one was a promotion. The other one looked like a demotion. One is in, I think, in the series Band of Brothers, where na promote si Captain Winters, but his heart
Mhm.
was he wants to stay with his team, and he couldn't do some of the things that he wanted to do with his, old team, because he's more responsible for a bigger one. And so that was his season to go to that direction. Another one was with the Sweb, uh, a couple of weeks back, where he was the one who asked his boss, said, you know what, um, I don't want to get to this level because that won't be me. Bring me to a place where I'm actually most effective. And for other people, it looks like a demotion, but really, he was just operating in his strength. And so, for me, the way you dealt with that was number one, very gracious, but also very wise. And maybe not a lot of people would have dealt it the way you did. And speaking of wisdom, because somebody typed about crisis here, you were sharing with me about the preparations you had to make because of the outbreak of COVID-19, the pandemic that we're all experiencing, not just in our nation, but of course in other parts of the world, which has affected the workflow of your company because your company has multiple sites in different nations. And you said that you were one of the top, if not the top, performing uh, nation organization uh, nationally, and even other nations are looking into how you were able to do that. Now, as a leader, what sort of preparation did you make? How did you rally the people under you and say, we can do this, and be able to perform almost, if not 100%, at home as if they were back in their cubicles in their workplace? I mean, what sort, as a leader, paano mo hinanda yung sarili mo, and how did you prepare your people to say, boss, I'll do this? Because I guess it would be understandable that there will be a, you know, uh, lag of performance because people are at home. It's harder to check on them. So, can you just speak on that for a bit?
I think first of all, out of respect to to my peers in the industry, I I can't claim that we are the best at what we do in the nation. Um, I think we are great and we are the best in certain things.
Mm,
But the best is always very subjective, right? And I think
yeah,
one of the best ways to keep being one of the best is to consider yourself not the best, and to look at and to stay hungry, and like you're always trying to push the needle and chase something. um and so I just wanted to say that, and we do our part. I think as a Manila office, we surprised ourselves also. I think crisis has a way of squeezing out what is inside, the insides of an organization and a leadership team. And one of the things you do as a leader is you prepare for times of crisis. You prepare the strength of the leadership team, the
yeah,
ability to collaborate, the ability to work together, the culture of collaboration. Um, and thankfully, the time to do that is not at the point of crisis. Because I remember when the lockdown was announced, it was announced at around, if I'm not mistaken, something like 7 p.m. for effective 12 midnight. It's already the lockdown. Um, and people got stuck in checkpoints. They couldn't get home from work and all these things. So if that's the only time you're preparing as a leader to develop the ability to lead through crisis, you're too late. Um, I think what we did, uh, I would say this, and I say this like a dad with so much pride in their children. Not that I look at my team members as young kids, but I was so proud of my leadership team. So proud. Oh my goodness. I'm just so proud of how we worked together to move mountains, and there was no territorial dispute. There
mm,
was no one trying to outshine anyone. There was so much maturity in the team, in that they knew their roles and their timings. They knew when to let this person shine, and this person knew when to let this person shine and step up.
wow,
And that happens when you have chemistry as a team. That happens when you've been in the trenches together as a team, and you've had
yes,
wars together as a team, even amongst each other. You've fought battles with one another. You've resolved conflict with one another. And the thing that showed the most was in all those conversations with the leadership team. None from the leadership team was thinking I. It was all them. What about them?
wow,
What about them? What about them? In fact, no one thought about, I don't know, a situation where someone said, eh, paano naman ako? Or paano naman
wow,
tayo? Or it was all hands on deck, making sure that close to 600 families represented in our
Wow.
organization were taken care of. The janitors, the drivers, the security guards, the even people who were not directly reporting to our organization, they were third party. I would get messages from on my phone saying, "Boss, nakakakain ba yung mga guards natin? I want to donate 20,000 of my salary to this person, and I want to gusto ko magpakain." And I believe in times of crisis, the team's unity is one of the most
Wow.
important things that will show. And I'll say this: I'm also blessed to work for an organization that truly cares for people. It's not lip service. I mean it. They
Wow.
really care for people. And we bought, we spent about up of north of 10 million pesos to
Wow.
equip everyone with laptops, uh, and deliver it to their homes, deliver
Wow.
monitors to their homes so that they will have a second monitor and all these things. And when you have that, when you give trust, trust is paid back.
Wow.
So we don't feel like we need to watch you and say, "Oh, are you really logged in? Are you working? Are you?" I believe there are some people who probably work better in the office when you're watching them, when someone,
Mhm.
a supervisor, is walking along and all that. But generally speaking, I believe the organization has responded to the trust that has been given to them. And so if you give trust and you develop that, it will come back.
Wow. You know, you can't like overemphasize the importance of the unity, because crisis will come and go. You know, this
Yeah.
is not the crisis that we're probably in right now. Maybe the most obvious also, and yung scope is quite different. So that's why it's in a different category. But you've dealt with a different kind of crisis before in your company, and people have dealt with crisis on their own, so they will come. But when you find what you're saying, if you uh, were able to create that culture in your organization where um, it doesn't mean you all like one another, it doesn't mean that there's always 100% agreement with one another. We're people, but when it comes down to it, when it's needed, you all came together and say, okay, how can I be a supply to you? Not thinking about getting a supply for themselves. That's an awesome. That will be an ideal in any organization. May it be church, may it be school, may it be in your sphere. Great. Even the Bible itself, Psalm 133 would say, uh, you're blessed if the whole body meaning the complete unit is in harmony.
Unity,
An amazing
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
harmony.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what, we've already spent an hour and a half, would you believe, and we're just having
Wow.
conversation here, and people are getting a lot of stuff from the things that you're saying. I'm gonna leave you a few minutes. If there's anything that you want to say to the leaders that are watching, the people that are watching, and maybe I'll throw in this question as well. Um, as you're growing, continue to grow as a leader. What part is the grace of God playing in your life, and how do you how do you bring it? Because you're not a different Carlo when you're in the church. You're the same Carlo that goes to the office, that goes home. You may be playing different roles, but the core of you is the same. And where do you find your center, and how do you make sure that's the most important thing in your life? I mean, okay, just comment on that.
Um, I siguro parting thoughts, parting words. I would say this: as a leader, the very first person, if you're aspiring to be a leader, or if you're already a leader, the first person that we all have to lead is ourselves.
Wow.
Um, and truthfully, we are the hardest people to lead. It is hardest to lead ourselves than anyone else, because as a leader, if you try to lead other people, you can use your position to lead. You can use your authority, and that's a very low level of leadership.
Mm.
But you can get away with it to some degree. But the truth is, the very first person you need to learn to lead is yourself.
So true.
And you cannot use authority or position to get yourself to do anything. Um, the ability to follow through on the goals that you set, on the standards that you set. I would say this: I have not arrived in any way. I continue to need the grace of God in my life and the mercy of God in my life. But the grace of God is, and I'll speak now. If you're an unbeliever, if you're an unchurched person, bear with me. I will speak to my fellow Christians. Um, the grace of God is the empowerment to live uh, in victory. It's not the
Yes,
excuse to live in defeat.
that's true.
And none of us have fully arrived. I believe we are all being transformed. Uh, as we behold His image, we are then transformed. How do you find yourself centered? Uh, Leadership has its perks. It does have its perks, but never define your worth on the perks of your leadership. Never find your identity in the size of the organization you lead, in the title that you carry, in the salary that you earn, in the prestige of the clothes you wear, or the kind of love or following that people give you. Because if you find your identity in these things are superficial, and what man can give, man can take away. I know how it is to be applauded for a job well done. We are out of time, but if I can tell you how much all my failures I've experienced, we will need more than an hour and a half. I've had a lot of painful experiences of failure. And I'll tell you this: the same people who will applaud you will be the same people who will criticize you. So do not define your worth on the applause of man. If you do, when they no longer applaud you, you will question your worth and you will question your purpose. As a leader, you must go back to why you are even a leader. And a leader is there to empower people. A leader is there to create positive change. A leader is there to develop leaders so that they in turn can make a domino effect of positive change around them and impact lives around them. And so you have to go back to your purpose and you have to go back to your call. And to find your purpose, you must go back to the one who gave you your purpose and to the one who made you. He owns you, he made you, he created the manual for you. And the way to stay centered in who you are is to always find your identity in the one who made you. For me as a Christian, and I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but as a Christian, for me, my identity is always grounded and rooted in who I am now who I belong to now. And that's Jesus Christ. And I am in need of his mercy, I'm in need of his grace. And every time I come to him, I find it. I find it. And perfection is not a requisite. If you are not a Christian, I got to tell you this. Christians are not called Christians because they're perfect. Christians are called Christians because they found their identity in Christ, and that they found that apart from Christ they are nothing. That's who I am. That's my story, that's my identity.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. If you just listen to that last part of what Carlos said, that's already worth another hour or so of just unpacking all of that. A lot of people are asking already before we ended, part two, please. So there may be a part two, maybe next time with Isa and with Pastor Mitch. Then that would mean we will need 3 hours.
And 20 minutes lang tayo doon.
Buti nga 20 minutes lang eh. Sabi ko tayo introduction lang and then let them handle the things. But I would say this that a part of our life because this is not the first time our path has crossed me and Carlo and we've seen each other. Like I said in the beginning, I knew him when, of course, the church setting, but in the theater setting where he kind of tried that out for a bit, maybe part of your discovery phase, and but to see where you are right now, such an amazing thing that God is doing, and I feel you because you said a while ago that there's an expectation, maybe people put it on you to become a certain way, since you were a pastor's kid. And
Flawless and perfect.
hindi lang yan kasi parang expectation, no? That's the same path that you will take because you certainly can handle the language, the communication of it. But it's an amazing thing to see God use you and you flourishing in the area where He puts you. But it does not mean you don't have a place in the house, so that's always an amazing thing to witness, and I'm sure that there will be greater things, and I think your platform from here will just expand whether through this company or another way. But I'm seeing that in your life, but at the same time you're one of those people that I see that are equally gifted to be able to use both tools. I spoke that before in the church. The tool to be able to build, but also to another tool to be able to go to war. So take that however you want. Build the marketplace, build the house of God, go to war in this, but also fight your battles here. So for those of you who are listening, I pray that you were able to take a lot of things. Of course, this is just a glimpse of the leadership that Carlo espouses, and lead by example. And we see, and we're blessed to have that leadership also. We get showered by that blessing here in church as well. Um, do share with other people if you enjoyed this conversation. Do share it with other people. Maybe you know somebody who needs to hear this, or maybe you need to hear it again later on. Because some people are writing their notes on the comment section, and it's an awesome thing to see. But do you have any last things that you want to share with people before we say goodnight?
No, I thank you. I mean, I think time is the most valuable resource that we have, and I wanted to thank you, Pastor Alvin, Pastor Mitch, and of course everyone who tuned in for giving your most valuable resource, which is your time. We Pastor Alvin and I do not take that lightly. We honor that
Mm.
time, and we want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. Uh, Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. Well, you guys are blessed. Have a wonderful rest this evening. I'm sure there are certain things you want to meditate on in regards to leadership. Also, leading yourself and staying focused on the Lord. Tomorrow, we're going to have a great day, Sunday service, and be ready for the word. Keep yourself expectant. And, times are changing. They have some adjustment in regards to the regulations they have for uh, what we're going through. So we continue to adjust, but guess what? I believe that we're just in for an awesome quarter and an
Yeah,
awesome. I think we will be surprised in how this year is going to turn out. That's what I'm trying to say. I know that
yeah,
it's been a shaky first quarter, but the things that will God is able to do with the remaining part of the year, I think it's gonna blow our minds. So keep that in mind, and watch out for the next Sabado nights. Enjoy. God bless you all. May you sleep well.
Thanks, everyone.